Namaste. Welcome to our Satsang. I think it's the month of November. I wish that'd mean I was so heavenly minded I couldn't remember this. No, it's just because I'm uh, so heedless of what's going on around. Uh, thank you. Thank you for coming. And it's commercial time. And I've done this before, but I really want to do it again. These two books, Spirit and Life, commentary on the four Gospels. It's really important because when we consider the four Gospels, not the way I had to suffer for decades in church, but look at as a spiritual document, indeed, as the teachings of a Nath yogi who had spent most of his life in India. And therefore, in the Gospels, we're constantly being turned back to sadhana, continually. And I don't know why this really struck me when I was going a final read through of these to see if there were any typos that needed to be caught. And I thought, well, this is really great because, you can get lost in, oh, isn't that amazing about this cosmology and, oh, this or that. They're only interesting facts, but they're trivia, really. They don't mean anything. But one thing is needful, and that is sadhana. And this really points to that. So I'm recommending it. Again, and next, we have, you have to forgive me in dealing with these things because the camera makes it backwards. So when I think I'm moving to the right, it goes to the left. Okay, an Eagle's Flight. This is a new overhaul. I went through it all, did some rewrite, and especially did an addition. I put in almost 100 extra pages under a section called Blessed Memories. And these are about people I met in India that were remarkable, but not just on their own. You see, you look at a field and there are the plants growing and it's healthy, and they say it's like corn, it's abundant, and you know that the soil is ideal. I'm from McLean County, Illinois, which has perhaps the best soil in America for agriculture, and so I'm remembering what it used to be like to just look at a cornfield. Well, the same thing is true of a religion, because Sanatana Dharma and India cannot be separated. So what does a religion produce? Now, Solzhenitsyn had lived through decades of murderous spiritual, religious persecutions in Russia. He had lived under the Stalinist era. And here in America, we had absolute freedom to go to church as little or as much as we wanted, and to publicly express religion. And he'd grown up in an environment where you couldn't do it. So when he came to America, the first question he asked was, "Where are your saints?" And what answer could he get? Where are your saints? So this is what you ask of a religion. If you look at a machine of any kind, you say, well, what does it do? And how well does it do it? So this is the real test. Throughout the world, all the people that walk on 2 feet and are sentient and have the, requisite fingers, toes, they are human beings. But human beings are embryonic devas, gods. Little g, but still gods. So you ask of a religion, how many gods do you produce? People that say, oh, I won't even bother to talk about the Hindu religion, all those gods. Yeah. And besides all those gods in the scriptures, you can go there and see gods walking around. Human form, but like all of us, essentially divine, and that divinity is being expressed. And so I wrote, I think it's about 20 people, what I wrote about meeting them myself. Often very unexpectedly. I mentioned about an incredible yogini that people thought was crazy. I was just at a bus stop waiting to get a bus. And I heard from behind me this very strange sounding voice. And then there were some other people there. It was kind of a little three-sided lean-to, but I was out on a bench in front of it because it was so tiny. It was already filled with people waiting for the bus. And then it sort of spoke angrily. And these people laughed and laughed, and they said, Swamiji, you can't believe it. There's this crazy woman sitting here with us. And, and we're teasing her, and she just said, I'm the daughter of a king, I'm a daughter of the king. You be careful how you speak and act toward me. Well, when they said that, I thought, because you see, often in India, part of a person's sadhana is they kind of take on the persona of, say, a scriptural being or someone from spiritual history. Like they'll think, all right, I'm one of the gopis who danced with Krishna. I mean, they don't try to brainwash themselves so they don't really know who they actually are by birth, but it's like they can take that bhava, that state of, that interior state of devotion. And so I realized she is in the mode of Parvati, daughter of King Himalaya, wife of Shiva. And after a while, they annoyed her so much, she got up and came out and she squatted down in the road. They were doing road repair, and there were rocks about this big. And so she grabbed onto these rocks and threatened to throw them at them. And so they shut up. And then she looked at me. And she said something to me. And I figured out that maybe I figured her out. And my mind said, I'm sorry, Ma, I don't know Bengali. She went, And she asked me some questions about myself. She spoke in Bengali, she spoke aloud. I knew what she said. In my mind, I answered. Then I said to her, may I ask you questions? She said, yes. And I asked her a lot of questions about yoga sadhana. Not anything I can remember about philosophy, because philosophy doesn't mean anything. It's just a theory till you have realization. Sadhana is a way to realization. So I had all these questions about sadhana, and she answered them, but then at one point, she just stood up and walked away, and that was the end of that. So anyway, I write about her, but I write about, about 19 others. I do put Anandamayi Ma and her mother, Swami Nirmalananda Giri, in the accounts. And therefore, I loved writing it. To remember these people is truly wonderful. So I've added that in as well. And I hope you like it, reading it as much as I liked writing it, because how wonderful to remember these people are part of your life forever. When you meet someone like that, if you really meet them, now that's not mere physical proximity doesn't do it. If you meet them, you'll never forget them. Like my miracle working grandmother, my mother's mother. Nobody ever met my grandmother. I was the only person who knew my grandmother, because I knew her supernatural dimension, which was incredible. She confided in me when I began sort of poking the honeycomb, and therefore then it all came out. So anyway, there we go. Apologize for, I realize I haven't set a timer, and there's a light there that makes it hard for me to see the time. All right, good. I don't want to go on and on and on. I have the ability to do that. I think you figured that out. All right. Questions, intelligent questions, relevant questions. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. When one being delivers in quotes, karma that another being has coming to them, how much does the original being have to pay for it? In other words, if someone has, say, unpleasant karma coming to them, and someone is the instrument of the karma, and they deliver it to them, whether they speak harshly to them, they hit them, they take something from them, whatever it is, since it's the karma of that person to undergo it, then is their karma accruing to the deliverer of the hate mail? And the answer is, of course, it's both. You see, it's already set up in the karma. Let's say it's my karma to be slapped and called a fool. Okay, it's my karma. Why? Because I slapped somebody in a previous life and called them a fool. So there comes into the orbit of my life. They may be a stranger. I just know them for 15 minutes, or maybe somebody actually in my life. And it's their karma. It is their karma. They are an instrument of my karma, but it's also their karma to slap somebody and say, you're a fool. So, you see, the universe is confusing, and it seems chaotic and so on, but it isn't. It's absolutely perfect, and it's absolutely orderly. When somebody asked Ma about the world and the situation in the world, Ma Anandamayi, and she said, why don't you see it is perfect right now as it is? Because it's perfectly manifesting imperfection. She didn't say those words, those are mine. So then, it's the meeting of the twain. Thomas Hardy, wrote a poem called The Meeting of the Twain about the iceberg and the Titanic and how they came together. In other words, if they had mutual destiny, which they did. And so this happens. So everyone you meet, you have karma to meet them, and they have the karma to meet you. Therefore, do as much japa and meditation as you can to create the karma to meet God. And I'm not talking spiritual poetry. That's what really matters. So, there it is. Are eggs and milk and its products rightfully part of a vegetarian diet? Well, since it's not see, eggs, filthy things. I mean, they're literally filthy. They are filled with all kinds of nasty things. After all, they do come out of a chicken's rear end. And milk is easily contaminated. So the truth is, both of them are good. Now, since the egg is sterile, though I've known perverted people who went to health food stores and paid a lot of money for fertile eggs so they could eat the life of the egg. What monsters! And get the life out of it. See? There was a man that made juicers. And in his propaganda, he'd talk about how his juicer ripped the cells in such a way that the most nutrition would come out of it. It was like a vampire, a vampire writing, but on another subject. So, it doesn't take life to eat it. It's silly to say egg isn't meat. An egg is just a first stage of meat. So to me, they're not, and certainly they're not part of a human diet. We're not calves, and the milk is meant to cause growth. I'm very serious. In the calf, there's all kinds of hormones in there. It isn't just little nutritional units, some vitamins, some protein. Of course, everyone's obsessed on protein. But no, but it's for that. And giving it to children can affect their growth. But we don't necessarily observe it well, but it is doing it. It can, and they put hormones in milk. They put hormones in the cow, the hormones go in the milk. It's growth hormones. I have known of boys who began to grow beards when they were 10 and 11 years old because of the milk they drank. It's not a fantasy. So, I remember meeting a really remarkable man, and he asked a little bit about our monastery, and I said, we're vegetarians. And he smiled and said, that is the true beginning of wisdom. Okay, therefore, all that. Can you explain the relationship between the Nath Yogi tradition and Tamil Siddha tradition of South India? No, I have no knowledge about it. If we want to, because the Nath tradition started almost in primeval times, then it would be very logical that the Tamil Siddha tradition is a mutation of that it's has a common background. Have you met any Black or African yogis, and is there a yogi tradition reflected in any of the indigenous African religion? No, there's no yoga tradition in any religion but Sanatana Dharma. Now I know the Christians have certain meditation methods, etc., 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 and some people think that's influenced by India. Who knows? But, people have intuition, and people have in previous lives practiced. So there's no reason why people outside of Sanatana Dharma would discover these things. So that they're true. I fail to see why there would be anything significant about being an African. They are human beings just like everybody else. And so, it isn't look Fido sits up. We're all absolutely one. The human race comes from two people, Manu and Satarupa. So we're all relatives, and We all have the same ultimate bloodline and lineage. It's spiritually unhealthy to keep attention on this kind of stuff. And also, ultimately, it leads to, whether we want it or not, a denial of the complete legitimacy and equality and value. Being equal means nothing. 1 penny and 1 penny, they're worth 1 cent. But one giant lump of gold and another giant lump of gold, they're equal, but they're very valuable, and that's what every human being is. So this is important. Forgive me for the soapbox, but I don't really mind that I got on it. All right, can you tell us about those around Anandamayi Ma who became something, who actually followed her teachings? I mentioned some of it in the Blessed Memories. Was there anyone around Ma, though, who became really special, really spectacular? The problem about spectacular is seeing it. There were 2 or 3 people that I witnessed around Ma who were absolutely remarkable, but they kept it all hidden. Just as God stays invisible from us, and people thought, well, these are nice people. But the truth is, they were very enlightened people and very supernatural people. One was Swami Paramananda. He basically administered the whole Anandamayi Sangha. And he was not a people person. He did not have interpersonal skills. Therefore, he was not disliked, but he wasn't really liked. But he was Trigunatita. He was beyond the 3 gunas, and he was something amazing. Then there was Didi, Sri Guru Priya Devi. I have to admit to you, I can't even remember what her actual name was by birth. And she was absolutely supernatural. Sri Ramana Maharshi had a remarkable devotee. Some of you who know about Bhagavan may have read of her. Her last name was Telyarkan. And I don't know her first name. We all called her Ma Telyarkan. If you ever wanted to meet an angel walking, it was Ma Telyarkan. And she had lived for years with Bhagavan. Many of Bhagavan's devotees were very, very relieved to meet Ma. In fact, often, not just 1 or 2, several of them would say, Anandamayi Ma is Ramana Maharshi in a female form. So anyway, Ma Telyarkan was truly incredible. I was fortunate enough to meet her. She was kind enough to talk with me. And I read that one time she went to the tip of India to one of the great shrines there, Rameshwaram. And one of the features is a very gigantic and sort of miraculous statue of Nandi, the bull on which Shiva rides. Nandi, of course, is actually a great, great deva in Siddha, just looking like a bull. And anyway, she said that when she came into the temple there, and there was a huge Nandi, when she looked at the Nandi, it had the head of Didi. So from then on, she always called Didi Nandi. And Didi was certainly supernatural. I was very lucky that Didi was very kind to me, and Didi would talk with me. And she, of course, wanted me to tell her things, what was going on in America with her ashram, etc. And so it was. As I say, Paramananda, Didi, and some you had no idea of. About 30 or so people traveled all the time with Ma. Mostly they were women. They just dressed in plain white clothing, and they were Well, Ma was the center of attention and so on. But I remember one time in Pune that there was this one woman, I say she's in her mid 60s. I mean, very serene looking person, but I'd never really especially noticed her. But I was sitting there and she was there and someone was going somewhere else and they went and they reached down and they touched her feet. I'd never seen anybody touch feet of anyone travel with Mom before. Touched her feet and she turned around and she just kind of put her hand like that and suddenly, whoosh. And I was impressed. I realized, all right, hidden inside here. So you see, this is one of the things that happens. Someone once asked my friend Doris McDermott, her husband was the head of the UN mission to India. I'm sorry, I didn't ask her. She asked a man who knew a lot about, should we call it inner India? He was actually an Indian man involved in the government, actually. And she was going to Benares, the holy city, Kashi, Varanasi. And she said, is there anyone really worth meeting in Varanasi? I'm going to be going there. So could you direct me to someone? And he said, well, there is one person. He's a dirty old sadhu. He didn't mean morally, he meant physically. There's a dirty old sadhu that sits all day long opposite the main post office. And he's the greatest yogi of Benares, but don't go near him or he'll start swearing and cursing at you and get up and leave. Oh, there you are. The saints do not have to conform to us. And unfortunately, we don't have the sense to conform to the saints. All right. So anyway, there were hidden jewels, of course, around Ma. Okay. Oh, we're back to milk. Swami Sivananda Saraswati said cow's milk is the most perfect food for the aspirant. Do you agree with that? He knew what he was talking about. He was an MD, by the way. But I tell you this, an Indian cow is not hardly the species that you and I have grown up with here in America. We call a stupid person bovine sometimes, don't we? If we want to really insult some woman that we think is just, stupid and so just say, what do? We could say she's a cow. Bharatiya cows, they are of a completely different order. I mean that. And their milk is of a totally different chemistry. And they're supernatural. Don't ever mistake it. If you go to India, if a cow goes near you or you go near a cow, don't do anything that might, so we say, spook them. But believe me, just reach out very gently, touch them, touch your head, see what happens. Wherever a real cow walks, the whole earth is purified. Truly, truly, these are supernatural. They say, well, look at them, they worship the cow. You bet they do. Don't be Western and say, oh, they worship what it represents. Nonsense. If it represents something, it is the thing. Even if it's only just like my finger is just a little bit of the whole body. So this is really so. But our poor, persecuted, worn-out cows that they keep artificially making pregnant. If you want to talk about oppression of females and real, how do you like that? You have to forgive me. I have a very faithful alarm. Pretty, wasn't it? So anyway, cows are horribly mistreated worn out and then sent off to be killed and their flesh eaten. It's a crime. And it's a crime beyond humanity because they are devas of a certain sort. Okay. Boy, I'm grumpy today, aren't I? Okay. Also in his book Meditation, he mentions the compound Soham says more powerful than Soham alone. Have you ever tried the method recommended by this great master? Many blah, blah, blah. First of all, he wrote things and he handed them in, and they were edited and then they were printed. So people put in whatever they thought would be extra. So we don't know that he said that. If he said it, fine. He was supreme. He was no human being. He was far beyond humanity. When he came in the room, God came in the room. However, God comes down and acts in a limited manner to fool us. So even great beings could even say silly things. I'm not saying this is silly, but also, so who knows how he originally wrote it? I will tell you this. I read a book by, a translation of course, by Adi Shankara, who was a great yogi. At one point in the text, in all capital letters, it said, Soham Hamsa, not in a sentence. It was in the middle of a paragraph. It was a truly non sequitur. I don't know how it got there, how it was in the manuscript originally, but it said that, Soham Hamsa. I thought, well, that's peculiar. But then doing Soham Sadhana, I came to understand it. It was a yogic test. Now, please don't think it means it's a test of whether you're a great yogi or not, so you've got to come up with some explanation for it that'll show you're a great yogi. If you want to, go ahead and do it, but please don't give me write me the results of what you get and ask me, is that it? But a person who does Soham Sadhana, and I mean through the day as much as possible, and some hours a day of sadhana, sitting in meditation, doing it, you may find out if Soham is Brahman. So if Soham Brahman wants to show you what these things mean, you will. And it won't really affect your life, frankly, if you do see it. But you may need to. So the truth is, and I've experienced exactly what this means and what it relates to, and I will not explain it and so on, because that can happen just spontaneously, and if it doesn't, maybe it doesn't need to happen. I mean, it didn't change my life, I can assure you. In fact, I just got some information. But anyway, saying Soham Samsa for japa, do if you want. I've noticed that people try to find every possible alternative they can think of rather than just keep your mouth shut. When you spontaneously naturally breathe in, mentally intone so, and when you naturally breathe out, hum. Why people have to panic and try to run for the exits when they hear about it, I don't know. But that's their karma and their samskara. They'll have to deal with it. I don't. Aren't I lucky? Does time exist outside the human mind? Yes, because the effect of time is seen on the earth itself, on plant life, and every aspect of the universe. There are stars that we say they die. In other words, they kind of go out. They don't radiate light anymore. And that's time, Mahakala. So it certainly does exist. And we're right in the gears of it. Okay, fine. In Talk 11 on the 40 Virtues, you mentioned the mantra Rama and, of course, Soham, which is my sadhana. However, this reminded me that I heard an audio recording of Neem Karoli Baba continuously chanting Ram, 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 and wondered if you ever met him in India. I saw him. Inwardly, I guess I met him, meaning I was stunned and awed. There's something wrong with the Saharanpur district in Uttar Pradesh. They have utter paranoia about all outsiders, all foreigners who come into that district. I had a friend who was persecuted relentlessly. Every single day, an agent of the Saharanpur district came. By the way, she was in Vrindavan to be traveling with Anandamayi Ma, spending her whole days with Ma. This man came and badgered her like she was a CIA spy every single day for nearly a month. I don't know what's wrong with it. And they still kept it up. So many Westerners, European and American, and mostly American, went to be with Neem Karoli Baba, especially in Vrindavan. And they would, travel with him. But there was an ashram there in Neem Karoli Baba ashram in Vrindavan, and they would stay there. I met some of these devotees when actually I stayed there one time. He wasn't there at the time. So anyhow, one time when Ma was there and came to Vrindavan, so we went with her. And we noticed some Western people showed up to see Ma, who were devotees of Neem Karoli Baba. So one day we decided, well, we should go there and see Neem Karoli Baba. Neem Karoli Baba is believed to be a reincarnation of Hanuman, the great devotee of Rama. And Dr. Mother, Swami Sivananda, had very interesting experiences of him, revealing that he truly was Hanuman reincarnate. And a person of beyond description. I didn't feel he was as absolute as Ma, but I would say next to Ma, he was the most inexplicable of these great beings I ever met. But it was wonderful. Just the sight of him made you drunk with Anand. I say made you drunk. Well, it did me. It all has to do with our karma and samskar. But it was incredible just to look at him. So we were told you can't talk to him and so on because the government is pestering everyone about him. So we went and he was all alone sitting, I'd say about 20 feet away from the road. Well, we had a motion picture camera that had a lens, telephoto lens. So we passed it back and forth, putting it so that when we looked through it, literally, we saw most of he was sitting there cross-legged, so we saw him fully, and of course his face very close, much closer than you're seeing me. If I would come way up like that, it would be the way. And we were just drunk looking at him, whether we were looking through the camera or whether looking at him. It was incredible. He was divine. He was God walking the earth. Let me tell you an interesting story about him. Ma was in Almora. Almora is where the north east part of India, very near the Himalayas, actually in the Himalayan foothills. And there was an Anandamayi ashram there, and Ma was there, and a woman came to the ashram who had come from far, far away. Someone had told her that Neem Karoli Baba was in Almora. So she had come all this way at great hardship, and he wasn't there. But someone said, well, go to the Anandamayi ashram, at least meet Anandamayi Ma. She did. And so she told Ma how it was and how she wanted to see him so much. Obviously, he'd called for her or drawn her, whichever way you want to say. So Ma said, look, just go out in the front of this ashram and turn toward Brindaban, which was where I usually lived, and call out, Baba, Baba, come, and tell him you want to see him. Well, this woman was really sensible. She did what Ma said. She went out. She didn't care what people thought of her. And she looked down the road toward where Brindaban would be. It's a long ways away from Almora. And called, Baba, Baba, please come. And just pled with him to come. And she did it a good long time, an hour or more. And then here came a car, convertible with, top down. And there was Neem Karoli Baba. He got out of the car and he came up to her and said, do you realize how fast we've had to drive to get here, to see you? But now I'm here. And then those that were with him said, we started from Brindaban 3 days ago. And Baba said, fast, you must go faster. You must go faster. There's someone I have to meet. Fast, fast, go faster, faster. And so they're breaking his speed limit and so on. And so there it was. And so he came. He was a cosmic being, like Anandamayi Ma. Again, we always want to rate them. Of course, Ma was my life, my breath. And so Ma to me was absolutely infinite. But when you consider what I'm saying, why didn't I think of him as that? Well, I remember Brahmacharya Atmananda saying, thinking and talking about some of the great, great ones spiritually in India. She said, but once you met Ma, everybody else is at least somewhat boring. And that's definitely talk, very definitely not the words of Karoli. But so it is. So anyway, I saw him, but inside met him too. Indescribable. Indescribable. Okay. It's a rather lengthy question, but says, I'd appreciate hearing your viewpoints on Gnosticism. We see, one, they're all dead. So we only have books, and we only have books that have been transferred to us by people who print books. So the original manuscript we don't know necessarily, and the whole ins and outs, because you see, Yogananda actually used to sing, he who knows, he knows, none else knows. He used to sing it over and over and over for a long time. So a Gnostic is someone who knows. But how does a Gnostic convey what he knows to people who don't know? Therefore, the writings can be valuable, but we must remember they give us a hint and they may give us a good bit of information, but understand that isn't it. We have to be Gnostics. We have to know. The only value of a Gnostic writing is for us to get busy and do sadhana and become Gnostics ourselves. Because that's your inner nature is knowledge, jnana. And that's what's really important. So Gnosticism outside me doesn't mean anything if it doesn't urge me, motivate me to get insight. Also, a lot of stuff we're called Gnostics, they were just crazy. But since a lot of realized people appear to be crazy, then figuring out who's the Gnostic crazy and the agnostic crazy is not easy. Anyway, it'll never come out of books, except for my books, of course, which they won't. However, the book Soham Yoga, the Yoga of the Self, if you read it, you get the idea and you do it right. Yes, you will become a Gnostic. All right. Is it all right to do Soham Japa in a staff meeting? Or if your wife wants you to watch a movie with her? I'm not laughing like it's silly. This is the human condition, okay? Or is it better to do it alone while walking, during chores, reading, etc.? All the time, all the time, all the time. The staff meeting. Those people really need the vibrations of Soham. So you sit there and you quietly, as you breathe, keep it up. You've got an aura. Your aura extends some feet around you. So some of them will be in your aura, and it may be 10 years before the seed planted by your Soham vibrations will come to fruition, but it'll be there. You're helping those people tremendously. Don't think, well, it's a mundane thing. If I adjust this timer, it's a mundane thing. But if while I adjust this timer, I am intoning Soham and timing my breath, that becomes also a semi-supernatural act. You understand? You will change everything by your presence and by your touch. The staff meeting, which of course I talked myself off into a sidebar, I just want to tell you about Oliver Black, one of Yogananda's very, very great disciples, incredible. And he told about, you read an autobiography about this great master. He just called him simply Babaji. Actually, I've known a lineage of his disciples, and they tend to call him Babaji Brahmananda. Of course, Brahmananda's, a lot of Swamis are called Brahmananda. They tend to call him that, Babaji Brahmananda. And you might be interested to know that Rabindranath Tagore and his father were both disciples of him. Okay, so anyway, but people just call him Babaji, which isn't, of course, a proper name at all. It just means father, and with G on the end, respected father. So, however that may be, these masters know. Like right now, he knows we're talking or we're thinking about him. So, he was at a meeting of Ford Motors. He was on the board of directors of Ford Motors. And there was one of these directors that just had kind of a bug in his head about some aspect of the way the Ford Motors was being run. And every single time they had a board meeting, this man would hold forth and he would go on and on and on and on. They knew he was the type of personality that couldn't shut him up. Gripe. So Oliver Black went into the boardroom before the meeting, and he sat and he meditated. And he said, and he prayed, Babaji, please, I don't want to have to hear this another time. chewing on this old rag. Could you please do something about it? You see, masters are infinite, and that means to the infinite, there's nothing big and there's nothing small. So nothing is too small. Someone once asked about, I forget what kind of a subject it was, but they asked a big American intellectual who'd been there, oh, did you ever ask such and such about the Ma? And he said, I never asked Ma trivial questions. If you put it to Ma, nothing was trivial. But anyway, by the way, this great intellect, we found out that he did ask Ma, if a man attains perfect self-realization, does he know how many grains of sand there are on a beach? You think that's not trivial? So anyway, Oliver Black said, Babaji, please, I'm so tired of having to hear this. Will you please shut him up? Okay, so the meeting came. And naturally, at one point, the inevitable. So the man stood up and he went, and he sat down. And he didn't say a word for the whole rest of the meeting. So Oliver Black understood that Babaji had shown himself or said something, and that was that. So you see, there is no place too trivial, no activity too trivial to be with God, to be with your own higher self. Live in the Atma Jyoti, truly. Sorry. I wanted to ask if prarabdha can be an obstacle for a sadhana who is trying to start his sadhana, and if not, why is it so hard, at least for me, to start real sadhana? Is it just because of laziness or what? No. You need this. See, everyone says, oh, it's my karma. Karma is your best friend. Yes, if it's your karma to break your leg. If you're positing your consciousness in your true self, namely through sadhana, some really good thing will come from you breaking your leg. Karma is not a curse. Karma is a blessing. For example, you do something negative to someone, and then when it happens back to you, and you learn how uncomfortable that is, and you think, well, I won't ever do that to anybody again. Well, see, you've been blessed. Your behavior has been purified. So this is important. Also, you see, though, if you have in time said, will you get up and quit just sitting there with your eyes crossed, wasting time, you got to blah, 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 blah. Or your next door neighbor, what are you doing making a fool of yourself? What are you up, you've got family, you've got responsibilities. What are you up in that room for at 4 o'clock in the morning going, blah, 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 blah. If you're a big enough nuisance, and worst of all, if you succeed, and you get someone to neglect their sadhana, kaboom, your karma comes and sits there. There was a poem called Little Orphan Annie. There was actually a comic strip about Little Orphan Annie. And but there was a poem about Little Orphan Annie and the things that she told and talked about bad children. And it talked about a little girl who was very rude and said she would mock even elders. In those days, elders were considered worthy of respect. And it says she mocked them and she shocked them. And she said she didn't care. But as she turned to run and hide, a great big black thing was standing by her side. It snatched her through the ceiling before she knew what she was about. And the goblins will get you if you don't watch out. Karma is the goblin. We put it in action, and we got to deal with it. We got to experience it. Therefore, it also means that you've got a good chance of really making progress. Otherwise, that negative force would wait until further on in this life or a future life, you've got a really good chance, and then it'll come up. So you see, when you are opposed in your spiritual life, what does Jesus say? Rejoice and be exceeding glad when you're persecuted. Because it means cosmic evil, Satan, which is not a real person, but is the force of cosmic delusion, is worried by your practice and says, I better shut this man up. I better stop this. And so it comes either inward, or you feel really afraid, or you don't feel, or you start to feel a little sick, or other people are pressuring you. Rejoice and be exceeding glad. It means you've got the ability to really make progress in this life. I'm telling you very seriously. I'm not giving you some pep talk to just gloss it over. You are fortunate. So, break through that barrier into a larger realm of consciousness and life. Very, very. Yeah. So, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. I remember Prince George Grave. I'm a snob, so I tell you he was a prince. He was Russian aristocracy, but also a great figure spiritually. And in a conversation I had with him, decades and decades ago in New York, he said that he'd been told, he heard him when he was a child, he was a refugee from the Bolsheviks. I mean, he grew up in real Russia. And he said that, you see, there was a great monastery in Russia called Valam. It still exists there. It's there. And by God's mercy, now it's fully open. It has monks there. And their chanting is just extraordinary. So anyway, he said, there are evil spirits everywhere. He said, now in St. Petersburg, which of course was the capital and was utterly degenerate, he said, all the demons were fat and real lazy, and they lay around on the rooftops kind of like this. But at Valam, they were up on the rooftops hopping around like they were being burned, as if the very roof was red hot, because of the spiritual power, exorcistic power of the monks who were doing their sadhana. And so when you stir something or somebody up, look, you can go into a business, you can go into a place, like a big business, a lot of people, and there'll be somebody else that'll look at you like, oh, I'd like to just tear your head off. Or they'll look at you and run. They will hide. I've had people hide and then kind of keep peeping out. Is he still there? Is he still there? A man wrote to me from England, and he said, since I've been doing Soham sadhana, when I walk down the street, there are people that look at me and they just make this horrible face, or they turn around and they run out of sight. Yeah, well, they're in bad shape. It's too bad. But he was in good shape, radiated. So, fine. Okay, all right, talking about radiations. I've noticed that when I meditate over an hour, sometimes my Rudraksha beads begin to vibrate around my neck. I don't let it distract me and keep my focus on the Soham intonations. Can you explain this phenomenon? Yes. First of all, it's very interesting oh no, I need to show how I'm in tune with the infinite. Before coming down today and reading this question, I've been thinking very much about Rudrakshas and about talking about Rudrakshas and talking about certain aspects of Rudrakshas. And so then I got this, and that's good. Rudrakshas. Now let's see if I'm going to be all tangled up with something. Now you can't see this, but I'm still going to put it very, very close. Oh, it's all out of focus, isn't it? Oh, well. Okay. You see, there are different kinds of Rudraksha bees. But each one of these bees, see, they're seeds of a tree. They all have small vertical lines. And these have the lines divide them so there are 5 facets or 5 faces. In fact, they're called Panchmukh, 5-face Rudraksha bees. Now, there are everything from 1-face Rudraksha bees all the way to a dozen faces. And they all have different effects. However, please stay away from these Rudraksha bee websites run by supposed experts who want to sell you like a combination of Rudraksha bees will make you have money or they'll make you be creative. Fake, fake, fake. But they do have great magnetism. So they both impart magnetism, but they absorb magnetism. For example, you can be in a situation, let's say you're in traffic, where you're really in danger of injury or even death. And I have actually been in situations where I could feel this tremendous force just streaming into these beads. What it was the negative vibration, the negative kind of configuration or programming that could have led to, say, an accident. And like a lightning rod, you see, we don't have lightning rods anymore, but they used to put them on buildings being struck by lightning and burned down from fire, especially out in the countryside. When I grew up, it was normal that a farmhouse had a big, what looks like, you say, a big one-prong aerial, and then a heavy wire led down or went through a tubing and went into the earth so that lightning would strike the top of the aerial and it would be immediately transferred down into the earth and neutralized, and therefore no harm was done. So these act like lightning rods also, and they absorb negative energies. Therefore, it's good for every week or two, which I must admit I don't always do, is to take these and just hold them in your hand and run them under cold, not hot, cold water for, say, 3-4 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, however much. And the water takes vibration away. And so it will completely take away the negative vibrations. So you also may be feeling that these have sort of taken up their maximum capacity for absorption, which has been helping you and protecting you, and you need to clear those vibrations out. It's a good idea, like I say, every couple of weeks or so to do this. So that may be why, I'm not saying it is, that may be why it is. You need to cleanse it. The other is you just may be shown that these are not just some dead objects. They're not just something you can do japa with or something that reminds you they're Shiva. that they do have a power and they do radiate a power. Absolutely. So I can't say absolutely which it is, and it could be both. So just try what I've advised and see what happens. But believe me, these are some of the most valuable tools a yogi can have in the sense of equipment, uh, shielding equipment. Okay. Oh, right, fine. Our last one. Oh, we're virtual. Yeah, just a little. I don't know the situation this comes from, but I understand. What to do among predators in a small community setting? Well, see, I come from my heavenly little hometown. I loved it. Oh, we had grouches. 450 people. But I have known towns of it that were 200 people, and I remember there was one about 7 miles from my hometown. There were 24 people. So, and yeah, predators. Make yourself strong by constant japa of Soham. By purifying your life. You don't have to do do visualization of great white lights around me, it's protecting me and so on. If you're saying Soham, believe me, from a distance, that influence is there. That's why you can walk in, somebody 20 feet away can look at you and go, oh, and be off, away. Very, 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 very definitely. It happens. I know of a case where there were people, a few people together in the house. They were doing sadhana, and something happened to the heating system. And so this kind of Neanderthal man came in, and he was to work on it. And he kind of went in, he kind of looked around. Then he at least opened the area where the furnace was. And then he turned around and he went and he picked up the telephone and he dialed the phone. And he was virtually crying. And he said, can somebody else please come and do this job? Can somebody else do it? Can somebody else do it? Because he was so evil. Let's not use the word negative too nicely sometimes. He was evil. I don't know what his life was, but he was evil. Aged in evil, seasoned in evil. And he couldn't stand the vibration. And of course, he hung up and said, somebody else was going to come here. And away he went. Then a normal human being came, did the work. So, keep it up, keep it up, keep it up. Now, they may end up not liking you if they're very sensitive. Some are clods and some are very aware. Just do that. And think of your whole town and feel as if there's light around it. And Soham, as you do it, is vibrating through the entire town. I'm serious. And feel that. And if you want, visualize them. And be sure your attitude is very objective and neutral. And just feel like the light of Soham is moving through them. You'll be surprised. Some people are obsessed by negative entities, and the entities are driven away, and then the people become all right. Or they may move away. Well, we had an ashram in one spot, we're right in a neighborhood. And I'm telling you, we saw people moving out of houses that we never saw them move in. And there was a house right next to us. And within just a week or two after we were there, you see, we were doing meditation, we were doing worship. Of course, people didn't know it. We never made any noise. And so right next door to us, the people moved out. So somebody bought the house. There was an apartment above, rented out. We saw people moving out of that we never saw move in. Finally, a very nice young couple got it. Very good and decent people. They got it. Well, they had no problem. And eventually they got one tenant above who wasn't driven out by sadhana vibrations. So anyway, you may help these people get on the road. It'd be better if you could help them to straighten out, but don't specifically bother. Send them blessing, send them Soham, and then see what happens. I'd be interested to know if you get a result from this. Thank you for the questions. They're very good, very intelligent, and shows, one, you are experiencing the expansions and the tides that come to a higher life. And then the other is, you're using your head. So thank you very much. I always enjoy these satsangs. Of course, I get to look at myself and listen to myself. So of course, where could I find a better a better conversationalist? So anyway, so it has been. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it greatly, and hope that by the grace and blessing of God, we will meet again.